Good morning, Anna. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Hi, good morning. I'm Anna Taylor. I'm the executive director of the Greater Sum Foundation, and I have been with the Greater Sum since its beginning, which is now about 7 years ago.
Awesome.
Before that, I worked for 20 plus years in different capacities with a nonprofit that was very young when I started and uh, has since grown to be a huge college access network across the state of Florida.
Very cool. And tell us a little bit greater sum, what is the kind of work services you offer through the greater sum?
Yep. So we are a capacity building organization. We're an operating foundation, which not a lot of people engage with operating foundations. They fall somewhere between the public charity and the private foundation in that we run programs. That's our kind of area of accountability to the IRS, but we also make grants to nonprofits.
Okay.
So the Greater Sums programs are a virtual incubator for early stage nonprofits, and then a pitch competition and a fundraising accelerator for those kind of exemplars in the field, people who are doing something really groundbreaking, exciting. We want to broadcast that to a broader network. And then the grants come in through the pitch competition and the fundraising accelerator.
Oh, that's so cool. I love this so much as someone who's in living in startup land and I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like, especially if you're an innovative nonprofit, the resources feel like they're very structured towards a more traditional nonprofit model.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to be honest, having been in a more traditional nonprofit environment for years, I a lot of the things that I know, I don't know why I know.
Okay.
So I'm often going back to say, like, or I was often saying, like, was that an IRS rule or is that a state rule or is that like just the way my CFO wanted it done? Right.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of pick apart what is a rule, what is a guideline, what is a best practice, and then like what is not great advice for you because of the kind of organization that you're running and the kind of work that you're doing.
I think that that's so fascinating because I can't tell you how often I hear from people in the sector going, you know, they feel like this is how we've always done it mind frame happening in their work. And I know it takes time and energy to question sometimes why it's always been done that way. Curiosity actually requires a lot of brain power, right? And attention to be curious. But I love that you guys are finding that interesting intersection with, innovation and nonprofit because too often those words seem to be separate in the world. So, favorite part of this work, you've been in a variety of orgs now, executive director role here is what is your favorite part of working in nonprofit?
Um, so my favorite part is always when the gears start clicking and something starts rolling and happening. So when I work directly with kids and with volunteers, it was those moments when kids were like, I know what I want to do. I know how I'm going to get there. And then like I'm still friends with a lot of those kids and they're in their 30s. Like so
So much.
my
I love
LinkedIn my LinkedIn feed is really exciting because of things like, doctors and lawyers and teachers and all these amazing entrepreneurs that are coming out of that work 20 years ago, right? And then when I started working more on the back end, I worked with local programs. And so it was always about like helping them unstick problems and get things moving and solving, things so those kids and mentors could do those things, right? And now with Greater Sum, it's all over the world, it's all over the country, it's every part of the sector, environment, health, education, community building. And sometimes people are coming to solve a problem that I didn't even know existed.
so cool.
And so I'm learning about it and I'm learning about the people who are there to solve it. And if something I can do can help them do that, that's what's important to me. Let me unstick whatever that annoying thing is so that you can do the thing that only you can do.
Oh my goodness. Just Love that. I feel like so much of what you said is exactly my reasons for why I love the Nonprofit Hive, because I feel like y all this great information, great missions, it all kind of floats up to me, and then I get to kinda go, "Oh, you should meet." I mean, I was just talking about how frequently I go, "Hey, Anna is the person you should talk to about this," right? To some of our innovative nonprofit, members, and yeah, I just
Well,
big feels for that.
that's why I love the Hive. That's why I really, since I joined, since my first conversation, I'm like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. It's this place where these connections get made, some by coincidence, and some because you are there going, oh, I know this person, and making those connections for us. It's great work.
Thank you. I love, yeah, all the cool members that are joining. It just makes me happy every day. It gives me the spark, right, in the morning to get up and go, yeah, the work's hard, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else at all. Challenges of this work in current role, past roles, maybe just your broader view, because you get to view so many nonprofits at different stages. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges we're facing in this sector?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are two that I'd
Okay.
like to bring up. One is really pervasive, and we talk about it a lot, but we still have to figure out what our role is in addressing it, and that's workplace mental health.
Mhm.
Because I work with early stage organizations, I work with founders, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of stress. And I saw a report recently that said like 80% of founders don't talk about that stress, don't acknowledge it, don't get help for it. That's one of the things that can come in and upset your progress towards your mission, right?
Yeah.
So, but then on the flip side, as a founder, you have the ability to say, I'm going to do things differently and I'm going to create a culture of care. And that I think is an important thing where the nonprofit sector specifically has a role to play in being a leader in taking care of people
Yeah.
behind the scenes as well as out in the community.
I love
So
you hit the nail on the head of, I would say, like 90% of the conversations. And I thought when I started the Hive, I was like, "I just need a place for everyone to complain about the work." And, I thought that's what I was creating, but I think sometimes when we have a place to be honest about what's hard, it's easier to find solutions because we're being really, like, transparent about the challenges. And
yeah,
I know the overwhelm in this sector for leaders and staff also means that if we acknowledge some of the problems, then we probably have to do something about it. We can't just pay lip service to it and say, "Hey, all staff talk about what's hard right now," and then set it aside and do nothing, right? Like that can sometimes be more injurious to teams than kind of not talking about it at all, right? But
right.
that mental health piece, huge, huge. Where was that report from, out of curiosity? Because I always find that super interesting to go and check those out.
The report is called The Untold Toll. And I found out about it through a Jobs for the Future webinar. I
Okay.
can't remember the exact source, but untold toll and stress will bring it up for you.
Amazing. That's super interesting. And, I think sometimes founder journeys, solopreneurs, people who are just getting started, it is really lonely. It can be a very lonely place. And when we only look at the social media or the LinkedIn, which is why I tend to be very honest on LinkedIn about, holy, I have no idea what I'm up to and I'm just trying my best. That takes some confidence in order to say that that's where you're at. And I think too often we're seeing like that really curated, it all looks like it's flying and going so well. And I can imagine that, that must affect nonprofit founders even more so.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's one of the kind of commitments that I made to myself about social media really early on was that transparency. I always think, like there's one of my former students looking at this. There's, my kids are going to grow up and look at this.
Yeah.
And do I want to model BS or do I want to model everything that I can accomplish has pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, and there's a lot of mess involved in
Yeah.
getting to where we are. And so I think that if young people look at us and say, "Oh, I'm just not like her," then I'm not doing anything to help them figure out the stuff that I had trouble with going through it.
Yeah. Well, changing the world is going to be messy, right? Like, I think that's there's no straight path to a lot of nonprofit missions to go, if we only do this, 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 and this, it's over, right? And we know that that's not the case frequently. So I don't know why we don't expect that it's going to be kind of messy, and it's going to look, there's going to be failures, because we have to be open to failure in order to probably succeed on some of these big problems. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wish there was more transparency. I love that you use the word transparency.
Well, and that I mentioned there were 2 challenges I thought are
Yeah,
big in the sector, and that's kind of the other one, is this question of, like, we all wanna get the mission solved. We all want to do it effectively, we want to collaborate. There's so much information coming our way. It's an overload, and a lot of us, I don't know if you've ever just said, like, "I'm gonna delete this 250 promotional emails all at once. I'm sorry. Everybody who sent me a newsletter, I'm sorry." Right?
yeah,
But figuring out a way to go through all that information for the things that are lessons learned, not just the best practices, but also the pitfalls that you could help someone avoid. I think that's where I'm excited about the Hive, and I'm looking for other areas where nonprofit practitioners are trying to do that work. Not just of like making our own organizations effective and efficient, but like pushing it out into the sector. So we're all kind of working more in alignment.
I love that. Yeah, I think the alignment piece is huge for sure. And I'm going to pull it up because it just sparked. I was, doing the scroll on Instagram the other day, and one of the quotes was an Adam Grant one, just talking about, originally information scarcity rewarded knowledge acquisition, but now there's so much information that we're actually looking for pattern recognition. And
Mhm.
I think that's one thing I'm really noticing in the Hive community, but LinkedIn at large, is we're trying to go, who are other people who might be dealing with the same challenges as me? Like, you're looking to other peers in a way that I think we looked to experts in the past,
Mm.
but I don't know that experts always serve us that well, because most of us, I don't need to be an expert level marketer at this point. I really enjoy learning about marketing. I wish I had more time for it. But really, you're trying to get from point A to point B, and finding a peer who managed to successfully do that, or you can kind of trade ideas with. I think that's the new knowledge acquisition, right? And we're just kind of noticing that when we have real depth conversations with another human, I get so much more out of it in a way that I wouldn't have probably ever heard of the untold toll if we didn't have a conversation. And so I think it's that anecdotal stuff that is actually sometimes a new way of learning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it just requires a little patience combined with curiosity, right? Like if you're
Yeah,
so focused on like, here's what I'm trying to extract, that you're not gathering a little bit of what else is going on, then you're missing potential connections and ideas and so on and so forth. So if you invest a little patience and you have a little curiosity, then you find amazing things that are happening that can help you solve the problem you're working on.
I love that. Okay. Yeah, we could go on about this forever because this is like my favorite subject. But peer support, how does it factor into your personal work? But how are you seeing peer support factor into the success of the nonprofits that you're supporting?
Yep. So our virtual incubator is a self-paced curriculum because founders are busy, right? But
Yep.
then it's also a weekly peer chat for the 6 weeks that you're doing the program. And what I see more and more is I could have gone longer. I want to keep talking to people. I want to keep connected, right? And so we
Yeah.
have like coffees and office hours and stuff like that for people to just drop in and say, "Hey, here's what I'm wrestling with. Here's what I'm trying to figure out and then continue to get that peer support.
Having someone else, to bounce ideas off of in real time as they're building too, for me in playing startup land right now, which I never expected to find myself in, not my comfort zone at all. Being able to gather around a table, just did it this week with some ideas with people who aren't in the nonprofit sector, but they are fellow builders who are
Mhm.
building products, building communities. It was so nice for them. Like, they were very kind, but they're poking holes in all of my stuff. But I wouldn't have even seen them because I'm just too in it that it's hard to sometimes, get that broader view again.
Yep. I have a friend that I have a Monday morning virtual coffee with, and she's a founder. I'm a director, and it's always like, what's going on? What are you working on? What happened to that thing? And so there's that little bit of accountability, but also support. And that replaced for me like years of habit of a Monday staff meeting,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm like, that I have to be accountable for this stuff myself. I don't have a boss who is going to say, "Where are you on this project?" And so Mondays are actually a really meaningful time for me to like have that. I have some other like habits of organization and control that I try to do at the beginning of the week. So the rest of the week falls into place.
I love that, especially as an executive director. You just pointed out something so fantastic because I think a lot of executive directors, particularly in like small to medium nonprofits, you need somebody to talk to. You need that, right? Because you've got your team that you're supporting beneath you, you've got a board above you, but I think you need that psychological safety of conversation to talk about the challenges and yeah, that accountability piece. I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, so the other question I was going to ask you was focused in on you've been a Hive member for a while now. I keep sending people your way because I think you're brilliant. What have you gotten out of the nonprofit Hive to date with being a member?
So somebody mentioned a phrase once that really stuck with me, and I wish I could accredit it to them. Surface area for serendipity. And for me,
Oh,
the Hive is just creating a habit of making myself a little bit available for those aha moments. And so I've had conversations with people who are doing like marketing, branding, IT, all kinds of different like aspects of this work that get me thinking in different directions. And then I've introduced Hive members to some of my alumni. I've made connections with other Hive members, and it's meaningful in different ways. So if you are that person who is like, there has to be exactly a box around it, it has to check the same box every week, or it wasn't a good use of my time, you have to adjust your thinking a little bit
yeah.
into like kind of what you're building out through getting these different conversations.
I had one of our members early on go, I'm really struggling to take another chat because I need to work through the actionable goals after the conversation. And I said, I think you're missing what this was supposed to be because this is, maybe that does happen. And with certain people, absolutely it's happened for me where we talked and, I've got a plan and I'm like, oh, I'm going to send them these marketing resources and they introduce me to this person. Now I have this next step. But I think serendipity, like you use that word, it doesn't really just, if you go into it with too many goals and that box, I
Mhm,
don't think it's serendipity anymore. It's something different. And so if something amazing comes out of it, and it usually does for me, I'm always wildly myself throwing myself in chats with people and I really try to get the breadth of members from all over the world. I never know what's going to come out of the conversation. And I'm probably the worst for researching people beforehand. I'm just like, oh, great, a new chat. I'm super excited to talk to them. And but there's always something incredible, and I feel so fortunate that I go into it just hoping to have a great chat, and usually there's so much more afterwards.
yep.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with us, Anna. how can people get in touch with you? Greater Sum Foundation's website. I can include it afterwards. How do they go about getting in contact?
Yep, the website is a great starting place. It's the greater sum, sum.org.
Okay.
And you can find me on LinkedIn fairly easily. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me directly.
Okay.
But our application is open. So if you're interested in the virtual incubator, thegreatersum.org.
Okay, I may have to throw that in our newsletter that's coming out because that sounds incredible for a few of our members. So, thank you so much for doing this with me. Thank you for being a valued Hive member, and thank you for making the time for a lot of our members that I send your way because I think they would be really benefit from the different services that your team offers.
Thanks for having me, Tasha. It's a pleasure to know you and to get to be a part of the Hive.
Thank you so much.